Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider Podcast for Tuesday, May the 14th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris on this Tuesday. We are here in our Metairie studios, kind of a couple miles from the Saints practice facility and a couple miles from the Superdome on the other side, and kind of right in the middle of it all. I guess Saints Insider, right?
Sure.
Yeah, we're inside.
I'm not gonna comment on that.
Am I all right? Should we start over?
No. You got to live with that. I want
good.
everybody to hear that.
Yeah.
How long you been working on that?
Like 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't. I just blame my brain for trying to come up with some creativity there.
It was Reach City. You're the mayor of Reach City right
Okay,
now.
all right. The Reach City Insider, we'll talk about Saints minicamp, rookie minicamp ended last weekend. We'll talk a little bit about our takeaways from that. And also look ahead to the NFL schedule release tomorrow night, which I think we've all been waiting for weeks, NFL. I just can't wait till they do it in June.
I can.
Yeah.
I can wait until I don't want that to happen.
Give us the damn schedule, all right?
Let me book my travel.
Yeah, we'll finally get it tomorrow night, and we'll talk about what we expect and maybe what the Saints should hope for along those lines. We thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button, the like button on our YouTube channel. We've got some short videos up from rookie minicamp. Might post another one of those tomorrow as well, and we'll be doing that throughout OTAs and minicamp as well. So not just the podcast on that channel. Make sure you subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel for all of our videos, and you can also follow this show in audio format on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So, guys, let's break down some rookie minicamp. Saints first-round pick. We saw him in black and gold for the first time. We're reaching for content a little bit, but Tali Fuaga was in a Saints uniform, and the big news, of course, Matt, he's on the left side of the offensive line. He played right tackle at Oregon State primarily. Saints are trying him, at least to begin with, at left tackle.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't know if Ryan Ramczyk is going to be able to play in 2024, but so you would think he would be the natural replacement at right tackle, but OTAs haven't even started yet. To find out whether he can play left tackle, you got to put him out there eventually. So these are his kind of first reps getting there. I read that he played it in high school, but Fuaga told us that he really only started training seriously this offseason, and lead up to the draft. So he's not really used to it. He still said things were a little rusty for him, but I think it makes sense. And, he might be a better solution there at left tackle. And then you have Landon Young be at right tackle rather than Penning and Fuaga on the right side. So, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have no long-term answers right now. They have no good long-term answers at left tackle or right tackle. So if you feel comfortable about his ability to play right tackle, and in theory that's where he'd be best, most comfortable. Try him out at left tackle. See what he can do. See if it's going to be an option for you. Because if it is, and if he plays well out there, then that's a really, really great pick.
Yeah.
Getting a guy who could be your blindside protector for the next decade, and feel really good about it. And if he's not the same caliber of player on the left side than he is on the right side, then fine, keep him on the right side, and figure it out from there. But, you have to at least give it a look.
Rod, I think it makes a lot of sense to try this. I also, after the experience of Trevor Penning a couple of years ago, it's like just get the guy where he belongs and get him some reps. And we talked about them making a pick because they need a plug-and-play starter. And I guess the counter-argument would be let him be a plug-and-play starter on the right side and set it and forget it.
Yeah, I think it does say a little bit about Trevor Penning's, like where he is. I think the team does know that they need a backup plan if Trevor Penning doesn't come along. So, like they both said, you see what he can do on the left side. And if it pans out, then you're in really good shape. Well, not really good shape, but you're in good shape.
Better shape than you were.
Better shape, yeah.
Fuaga, Matt, you wrote a story about it. You can read on NOLA.com. Like he likened it to driving on the other side of the road. Playing left, it's easy to say, okay, well, what difference does it make right tackle or left tackle? Well, as someone who's driven in England, it's really difficult to wrap your brain around, okay, the left turn is the one that hugs the curve, and of the curb, and the right turn is the one that goes across traffic. And I have to watch out for things on my right side instead of my left side. Like you're sitting on the other side of the car. It just takes time to figure those things out.
It does. And, I think the encouraging thing is a lot of people have said that they believe he can do it. And maybe those statements are overblown. But, his college coach, when we talked to him after the draft, he said the only reason he didn't play left tackle in college was because they already had one and they wanted him on the right side. Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl, he said that he had Fuaga's footwork or athleticism should hold up at left tackle and that it shouldn't be a problem. And Clint Kubiak was saying just that his overall intelligence and his athleticism made it worth to at least take a look at. So I don't think the Saints are wrong here for at least exploring this option. And, this is what OTAs and training camp are for. You can, if it's apparent in this time before the action starts that he's not suited for that role, you can easily move him back. I think it's kind of just a sound approach overall.
Yeah, I agree. It's not like again, it's not like they have great options at either side right now. So see if your top offseason acquisition, which is clearly what Fuaga is, see if he can play the most premium position on the offensive line. If he can handle it, that's a huge bonus. And if not, you've got probably a plus starter on the right side.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, right now they have no good options at left tackle.
Right.
At right tackle, you mentioned Landon Young, and then Ryan Ramczyk. Maybe he comes back. I mean, but that's his natural fit if he were to come back. So,
well, who knows? And Penning could. It's still not his career is not dead in the water. I mean, he could still be a starting caliber player. We just haven't seen it yet. And like we've said all offseason, you can't go into the year just banking on it being okay. You have to have alternate options.
And they signed Ali Udo, who has starting experience at kind of multiple spots. So I think he's an interesting swing guy for them. We'll see how they do, but he has familiarity in this offense playing under Clint Kubiak. So, that they have those depth pieces. They've taken a lot of flyers this offseason on just random guys. They signed Lucas Patrick this week from the Chicago Bears, and he played center the last 2 years, and you wouldn't really think backup center is a spot where they absolutely needed, but he has experience at guard. I think we're going to see a lot of competition along the offensive line this offseason. I think there'll probably be 3 new starters if you assume Ramczyk isn't able to go, so it'll be pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, Patrick kind of fits the mold of the player they like to sign to, somebody with starting experience, multiple positions, kind of like Max Garcia last year.
Right.
Who's had played a lot of center before. They brought him in. He ended up starting a couple games of guard for him. It's kind of what they look for in players, especially depth pieces. You need to be able to play multiple positions.
Yeah, because injuries are going to happen, and you don't know where they're going to happen. So you've got to have people. Rod, regardless, it's not the most interesting or sexiest topic or whatever, but this offensive line is the question of this offseason. This new offense, everyone thinks it's going to give them a big boost, but it's just not going to work if you don't figure this part of it out.
Yeah, that's the big question mark. I mean, we talked about, what Clint Kubiak can do as offensive coordinator, but nothing he wants to do is going to work if his offensive line isn't as good as it needs to be. And I mean, last year it wasn't, especially at the beginning of the season. So that to me, that's we'll be talking about that from here until opening the first game of the season.
And probably after that too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
If they can just have a league average offensive line,
That's all they need.
Yeah.
it would be so big for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when Derek Carr was playing really well those last 4 games of the season, and they got the running game going a little bit. He still took 6 sacks in those last 4 games. It's not like he wasn't touched at all, but he wasn't taking 3, 4, 5 sacks a game like he was early in the year when their offense was atrocious.
Right.
So I mean, if they could just protect him a little bit better, if they could open a few more holes in the running game and really get that scheme on point, we could maybe see a really fun offense. But if they're what they were for the first 12 games of the year last year, they're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
And it comes down to Ramczyk and Penning for me. I mean, you need, preferably both of those guys, but if you're without either one of them, you're kind of in trouble, I feel like.
Still have a little bit of money in cap space to go maybe get more outside help, but there's other positions where you could use that too. So, last question on Fuaga: Do you all believe we'll continue to see him exclusively on the left side at OTAs and minicamp, or will we start to see, as the veteran players report, kind of some mixing and matching?
Dennis Allen left it pretty open, but I kind of assume they'll just continue it at least for the time being. I don't think Ramczyk is going to participate this spring at all. So, in theory, you can move him to the right side, but they're pretty confident what he can do there. That's left tackle is the bit more uncertainty. So if he is going to become a left tackle, he needs as many reps as possible. So I think at least for the next few weeks, at least before training camp, you try him there and see how he does. And you have that 6-week gap between June and mandatory minicamp and the beginning of training camp, and maybe you can reevaluate there.
Yeah, I'm with Matt. I would anticipate him being there and getting as many reps as possible. And honestly, I'll be interested to see what they do with Trevor Penning. They've been kind of non-committal on what they see him as. Like I think I've asked Mickey and Dennis both multiple times, is there a chance he goes to guard? Does he stay at left tackle? Could he play? And it's always been yes, but never a clear yes. He could play guard. Yes, we view him as it's just yes.
I don't think
he
they
is
know.
A player who
they got to figure it out.
Well, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. They have a vacant spot on their offensive line at left guard. Does Trevor Penning make sense at left guard? Maybe.
Yeah, I think he'll be the guy when I think we get to see the first OTA next Tuesday, assuming Trevor Penning is there. He feels like a guy who needs to be there. He'll be the first guy all the reporters scratch down in their notebooks. Where's he lining up? What's he doing?
Yeah.
What team is he lining up with? I mean, he might not even be with the starters. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he better be there.
If he's not there, that's a bad sign.
He will absolutely be there. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing if he turns into a starting caliber guard.
No, they need one of those too.
Yeah, and I think the area where he really struggled is his footwork and his technique out in space. And maybe if you get him a little closer to the middle of the field, and you let him use his best asset, which is his play strength against some of the bigger players on the maybe that's a better spot for him. And I think they could field a decent offensive line if he hits there. Yeah. But I don't know if that's I don't know if we're even going to see that. Maybe they still want to keep him out of tackle. We'll see.
Yeah, best case is he finds a home somewhere and he's at least a productive starter. Moving on with our discussion of rookie minicamp here on the Saints Insider for Tuesday, May the 14th. We're talking about Spencer Rattler. We put up a video on our Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel, just a little 15-second video of Rattler rolling out and throwing a pass. Couldn't even see where the pass went, and it got more engagement than anything else we did. And that's the power of a quarterback. Want to see Spencer Rattler. What were you guys' thoughts on how Rattler looked and where he may fit? I mean, we're talking about rookie minicamp, but
yeah, Luke and Matt and I we were talking about how much stuff we were just learning just watching these guys on rookie minicamp. No, I'm joking. I mean, you're really not. I mean, he completed passes in 7-on-7.
Yeah, I saw somebody say he was 11 of 12, and he's a lot of guys could do that.
Well, look, I think you can see just watching him that he's a decent athlete, and he's got a good arm. But that's stuff we already knew going in, right? And I think it's going to be impossible to make any judgment on these players until we get into training camp and see some real legitimate competitive moments. And even then, the odds of him getting a ton of reps are pretty limited. We'll see a lot in the first week or two of training camp, but as soon as it starts getting into crunch time where the season's right around the corner, it's going to be hard to get a lot of opportunity to see him. I think we're going to get through this lead up to the regular season, and we're going to get into week one, and we're still not going to have a really good idea of what he is. Unless he's just a complete bomb and they cut him, which nobody thinks is going to happen. There's so little that we can really take away from these open periods of practice, especially when they're in shorts and t-shirts, and he's thrown against a bunch of tryout players.
Yeah.
You can see some of the gifts. I think that stuff is evident, but like gifts are only a percentage, like a small percentage of what makes a player really, really good at this level.
Yeah, and if you really like, it was obvious that he was throwing a lot over the middle. Maybe that's just a thing of this offense. The retention part is what coaches kind of stress about. It didn't really seem like they were starting plays over that often. You know, just watching, another thing that we were kind of paying attention to is just how the new offensive staff was handling Andrew Janoko, the quarterback's coach, seemed pretty expressive, pretty hands-on, and that was kind of, as far as minicamp goes, kind of interesting to watch. But, yeah, I mean, it's still really early. No bold, decorative statements that he's going to for sure win the backup job. But, you know, I preferred watching him over Kellen Mond.
Well, I tell you this: like when we start talking about storylines for preseason games, and it seems this August takes forever to get through, and you're actually talking about real games. What we'll be talking about, Rod, and by the way, we reported this morning. Jeff Duncan broke the story. The Saints' first 2 preseason games will be at Arizona and at San Francisco, so they're staying on the West Coast that whole period. We'll be talking about who's going to play at quarterback, who's going to look better between Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener, Nathan Peterman. And how they split up that time and who they get to play with.
Yeah, I mean, backup quarterback is, you know, a really important position for this team. And if Carr goes down, and I've kind of said it, I mean, I think, you know, when your team had Jameis, I think you felt a little bit more comfortable just because of his experience. But if Derek Carr is to go down, I mean, I'm not really confident in the guys they have behind him. So, but who that guy is what we're going to be definitely looking out for. And, you know, I know the fans are really excited about Spencer Rattler. And I don't know if we had that kind of excitement about Jake Haener last year, but so I think with Rattler, I mean, everybody's going to be watching to see who comes out on top in the backup quarterback battle. It's going to be a talking point for sure.
And they're both really starting from square one too. Haener doesn't have the, outside of like a couple weeks of head start. When they're starting doing the installs before rookie camp, that's about all he's got. He had no playing time last year. Very little NFL experience just with the training camp. He even dealt with a 6-game suspension to start the year. So he's not going into this with like foot in front of Rattler. They're pretty head up going into this.
Yeah. All right. Wrapping up rookie minicamp. Anything else you guys saw? Kool-Aid McKinstry, the Saints' second-round pick, did not participate. He's nursing some kind of minor injury. Is that right?
No, he's recovering from foot surgery.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was made clear after the draft that he wasn't going to.
Yeah, so he'll be ready, in time for
June, probably.
Maybe for minicamp, at least for training camp. He also hasn't signed yet, but that's common for the second-round pick to be the last guy to sign. Outside of that, we saw Bub Means, we saw Christian Boyd, Isaiah Zyram, some of the undrafted guys, your guy Dallin Holker. Anything else stick out to you guys worth talking about?
I'm interested to see what Bub Means can do. Once some more accomplished players get on the field, I think it was pretty clear to me that he was a standout among every receiver they had on the field. But like,
who are you comparing?
I don't know what that means right now. I think he moves well. He's definitely like a nice physical specimen. Like you can see it when he's on the field. But like, again, this is just the frame of reference gets so skewed at these rookie mini camps because there might be 5 NFL players on the field. So it's tough to really say. Hey, he looks good. We'll see if he looks good when he's lined up next to or across from Alontae Taylor, and running routes along with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Yeah, maybe he'll look completely overwhelmed then. But for the time being, I liked what I saw.
You can see the speed from Jermaine Jackson from Idaho.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
kick return.
He did a lot of return
He
stuff.
is small,
he's
man.
really small. Yeah, he was like.
How do you guys like the new kick return?
Oh, that's what I was going to bring
That's
that
what
up.
you were going to say?
Yeah.
Well, I'll let Rod finish then, and then you can.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you could notice you saw his speed. It was pretty obvious, but his size was kind of, I was a little surprised at how small he was.
Yeah.
They've had some smaller guys before, and it worked out. So we'll see if it works out with him.
The kickoff return, it was a funny moment of Darren Rizzi was like, "What are you doing? Run!" It's like, well, no one knows how this works. So like, maybe give him a little bit of a break.
Rizzi thinks about it as he goes to sleep at night. So yeah, he knows.
It's really jarring waiting for the ball to land before that you can start running. There's definitely that moment of hesitation and then that sprint, but I think it's going to be pretty effective of actually seeing some of these returns that it looked pretty cool too. I mean, it's very different, but
yeah,
I think it's an effective change.
It's that first preseason game when people see it like live, they're gonna be like, oh, whoa, this is strange, because that was, I think all of us were having that reaction. We were watching it just in training camp practice, like just even the practice setting when you were like down sideline view, it's different and weird, and they were lining up exactly where they would be lining up in a game situation. You're like, wow, the coverage team is really close to the receiver, and they're not moving until, like, they can't move until the guy catches the ball. Like, to Matt's point, like, the guys had no idea what they were doing because none of them have ever played that before.
It's probably like the most drastic change we've seen in a while as far as just watching football.
Well, I mean, when you watch a big football game on TV, you get the drone camera view of the kickoff and the guys running up, and it's kind of become like this, almost like a rite of passage. Okay, the football game is starting, and it's going to look totally different. Mm-hmm. But to your point, Matt, like, that kickoff play was almost defunct. I mean, nothing ever happened on it.
Right.
Rarely.
Yeah.
So we should see a big change. And I also wonder, you're asking the referees to look at two things at once. They can't run until he catches the ball. That's going to become kind of how do we signal that ball's been caught so that now the referee watching the official watching the coverage team knows that they're allowed to move, and did they move early before the ball was caught? Like, I could see that becoming a point of contention too. You can't look in two places at once.
Like tagging up on a fly ball, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost something you need to have video review for in some cases, and I don't know if that'll become a sticking point. So, all right, that's rookie minicamp. Saints have OTAs the next 3 weeks, and then mandatory minicamp in the middle of June. So we'll be there every step of the way. Watching the Saints Insider podcast on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about the channel. Like the channel. Do all those things. Sign up for notifications. And we're going to move into some other topics before we wrap up today, including the schedule release that's coming tomorrow night. I did want to mention one piece of news that came out yesterday. The Detroit Lions signed Jared Goff to a 4-year, $212 million extension. That makes his average annual value on his contract $53 million. Puts him, I think, 5th in the league, 6th in the league, something like that. And
I think second.
Is it second?
It's
okay.
second, yeah.
It's close. They're all
right
bunched up there.
Burrow, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I did read that. Joe Burrow is still the highest, but Goff's the... And listen, part of this is salaries are just going to go up with the cap, and quarterbacks are going to get paid more, and some guy you didn't expect to be the highest paid quarterback will be for a few years, and that's just how it goes, or for a few months.
It's not going to be long until I'm writing about a guy with a $100 million contract, and I'm wondering, like, man, should I really buy this this $40 T-shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I got to buy a new car. Those guys pay cash. I'm, like, worried about the note. That's how it goes.
They pay cash for their $200 or $200,000 Maserati from their single game check.
Kool-Aid McKinstry bought his mom a G-Wagon. So
I bet he paid cash.
I don't know.
More likely.
Yeah.
Anyways.
The point I'm leading toward here is from a Saints perspective. Derek Carr's contract, I don't know if you want to call it a bargain at this point, but he is now the 4th lowest paid starting quarterback who's not on a rookie contract. There's some qualifiers there, but like among the guys on a rookie contract, the only starters getting paid less than Derek Carr are Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and Gardner Minshew, assuming you count him as a starter. So all of a sudden you look at the Saints situation, and if Derek Carr does play well, they're getting a pretty good deal on the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why it was always, I know the sticker value always kind of jumps out at people. They're like, whoa, $37.5 million a year for that? But then, when you're talking in relative terms, like I think he was outside the top 10 when he initially signed it. And then you saw the list of guys who are going to be signing extensions. And look, he's going to be, by the time the season starts, he's going to be even lower on this list. Trevor Lawrence is due for an extension. Who else? Who else is
Tua? Justin Herbert, aren't they both?
No, Justin Herbert's already
He already signed his.
But yeah, there's still quarterbacks who could continue pushing it down, and that will just over the length of the contract. By the time it's over, he might be the 18th, 19th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So it's how it was always designed. They never paid him like a top 5 guy. You know, he's paid like a middle of the road NFL quarterback. And I think, you know, now it's just can he perform at that level consistently? Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Like, there are going to be games where he is performing like a bottom 5 NFL quarterback, but there are also going to be games where he's performing like a top 5 quarterback. It's just can you get a little bit closer to the consistent middle ground more often? I think that's the deal with this, and that's whether he's really going to truly feel like he's living up to the contract that they're giving him. But they're not even paying him Kirk Cousins money, and I think that was like the surprising thing about the Jared Goff thing is that, I think pretty widely, he's had a really nice career renaissance in Detroit, but I think he's pretty widely viewed as like outside the top 8.
Yeah, I think if you
NFL
ask a casual
quarterbacks.
fan, they'll pretty comfortably name 8 to 10 guys. I think.
So.
are
Like
better.
I was kind of anticipating he would get something in the realm of the, like a Kirk Cousins contract, like the kind of tier 2 NFL starter. I think it was a great job by his agent to get him $53 million a year, and even though, like you said, I mean, a couple of years down the line, this is going to look like a normal NFL starting quarterback salary. But right now it's just like sticker value on that.
Eye popping. Yeah.
I think you are getting some. I mean, I don't know who had the list of the rankings of the quarterbacks the other day, but it was like they had Carr like 26 in the league. And this doesn't make so sound. This is based on how good they think he is. To me, I thought that was a little low for Derek Carr. I mean, they had like J.J. McCarthy, I think, ahead of him. Who hadn't even played
Come on.
down yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think it's very low for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I think 20.
I think he's like the 15th,
17th,
15th or 16th.
Yeah, I'd say
best
20,
quarterback.
26, maybe 10 spots low. I mean, it's significantly low.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Like that's.
so I think it just kind of tells you that I think Saints may be getting a bargain if he ever, if he lives up to what we think he can be. So.
We're going to get all the comments in the video. Oh, some people are going to say he's a top 10, and the other people are going to say, well, he's terrible. And
I think that
the point is that
Well, but I think the comment you can make, right, against this is not that he's overpaid by relative to quarterback standards. Right. I think it's what is the point of signing a mid-market quarterback? I think that's the counterpoint against this, because he might be valuable relative to his position among where he's paid in the NFL quarterback rankings. But like, if that value is getting you a player who's going to lead your team to a 500 record, not winning games for you, then like what's the point of handing somebody $40 million just to kind of be a caretaker? Right. I see that argument. I don't necessarily view Derek Carr as that. I think he can be a quarterback you win because of, with the right stuff in place. But I can see that. I can see that counterpoint, because that's a lot of money for a mid-tier player.
So what you're saying is, and this is pretty well known in NFL circles, like the way to win is to find your quarterback in the draft and pay him on a rookie deal and win during that time.
And then
if he ends up being a very top echelon guy.
See, that's the thing. Yes, but the only way you're going to win with a rookie quarterback is if you have the right stuff around him, right? Like the Bengals got to the Super Bowl with Joe Burrow and his rookie deal, but like they had like a lot of really great pieces around him, and he elevated that. But the Chiefs, same thing with Mahomes. But like a lot of times, like these teams aren't getting to the Super Bowl until the guys have signed the second contracts, because at that point they've built them up and they've become a contending team around them. So like I don't necessarily buy into the way to contend is to have a quarterback on a rookie contract, because the only ones we've seen do it are Burrow and Mahomes. The only ones we've seen win a Super Bowl on a rookie contract, Mahomes,
Russell Wilson.
It's great in theory. But like if the Saints were to move on and they're a bad team and they get a top 5 pick and turns into a superstar quarterback, it might take them like 4 years to build a roster, a contending roster that's worthy.
And then you got to pay him again.
And then you got to pay him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to be like in perpetuity letting the guy sign or trading him or letting him sign elsewhere in free agency and drafting another quarterback because like you have to have a top 5 pick. And like if the Chiefs would have let Patrick Mahomes go so they didn't have to pay him $50 million a year, they would have looked like idiots. Just to have a rookie contract.
Now
quarterback.
Joe Burrow came close to winning a Super Bowl on a rookie contract. Jalen Hurts came close. I mean, it can be done. I think just because it hasn't been doesn't mean it's impossible. But and we'll have to see.
I just think that the argument's a lot more nuanced than like cheap quarterback who's talented. Like I get that, but like there's like a lot of times the only way you get the cheap quarterback who's talented is to bottom out the rest of your roster,
right?
Or just have like catastrophic injuries one year that you're not expecting, and all of a sudden you're a Super Bowl team that has a 4-win season because all your best players got hurt, and then you still have then it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, ask the Panthers. You got to hit on the pick too.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Well, I mean, we've also just saw that with the Chicago Bears. I mean, one of the reasons you draft Caleb Williams every time, but one, they lucked into the pick because they traded, Carolina traded up for that, but they were going to have to pay Justin Fields. And there was one of the interesting questions about, like, would Chicago have picked up his 5th-year option if they had just the 9th pick versus the 1? Like, there's an argument they probably wouldn't have drafted a quarterback, but you could make an argument for trying to get cheaper there. I mean, I know Howie Roseman isn't your guy, but I think something
it's not that he's not my guy. It's that I just get irritated with like the fawning over every single decision he makes.
But I think something that Philadelphia did well was they drafted Jalen Hurts, and they had insurance if Carson Wentz didn't pan out and Carson Wentz fell off, and then they had Jalen Hurts there. It's not a terrible idea to take as many swings at quarterback as possible. I think the thing we haven't talked about in this discussion is, as big as the quarterback number is when can you get out of the deal if you need to? And I think that's what's actually pretty appealing about Derek Carr's contract, is that it's set up in a way that if he wanted to, and if he bottoms out this year, you can theoretically move on after this offseason. Now, it's going to hurt a little bit because they restructured it, but it's not impossible. Even after if they wanted to cut him after like next season in 2025, it's pretty smooth there too. So it's just really, how are you structuring these deals? Can you get out of them if this guy doesn't perform up to contract? And the Saints have been pretty smart about that, I think.
Yeah, it's a great point. All right, we're going to wrap things up with a little talk about the schedule release. It's finally coming 7 p.m. tomorrow. I think NFL Network is doing this big rigmarole, and like Joe Buck and Jim Nantz and all those guys will be on there to talk about the games they get to call. We know a handful of things. We know that the Saints opener will not be against the Chiefs because they're facing the Ravens in their opener. We know it won't be against the Cowboys because or the Browns because they're playing each other week 1. We know it won't be against the Packers or Eagles because they're playing each other week 1 in Brazil. So we kind of know. We haven't narrowed down to about 9, I think, opponents for that week 1, but that's about all we know.
And it won't be the Chiefs in week 2 either.
Yeah, and Chiefs week 2 game is against the Bengals. So we just know a handful of things. What do you guys think the Saints should hope for? The argument is always, do you want your tough games spread out? Do you want them all at the end so that you can kind of grow into it and get off to a good start? Is there anything in particular you think that they should really be hoping for when this schedule comes out?
Well, if I'm can I speak for Rod here? Rod's hoping for week 2 in Green Bay, week 3 in New York, and week 4 in Kansas City. And then outside of that, he's cool with everything else.
They got that last year. They didn't have any cold weather games last year.
Yeah. Well, and I think Derek Carr has kind of a poor history of playing in cold weather games too, if I'm not mistaken. So they probably actually do want those to fall earlier in the season and not all 3 happening, November, December.
I do think this is a team that needs. Well, every team can say this, but I mean, this Saints team really needs to get off to a good start. I think Derek Carr needs that. I think Clint Kubiak needs that, and the fan base just kind of needs that, because if things fall off the rails early, I mean, it's going to be ugly again, like it was, last year in the Superdome at the beginning of the season. So, I think the NFL put out something today with the strength of schedules, and obviously this isn't really a true gauge because you're basing it off of last year's record, which, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything because teams change. But, I mean, the Saints are like they were next to the last, the second
That's
week.
them and the
But, I mean, when
Falcons,
you're playing the NFC South, you're going to be that because you're playing Carolina twice, you're playing Atlanta twice, you're playing Tampa twice. So, so the schedule, I guess, if you look at it like that, I mean, it can be a little easy, but I mean, we know this is much tougher than it was last year.
I'm with you on the fast start too. I think it needs to not only be a fast start in terms of record, but like it needs to be aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Like
The
you need
offense-
you need to give somebody something to hope for. Because like even last year when they started,
2-0.
2-0, it was a really really ugly win against
Tennessee.
and then
Carolina,
then
another
Carolina,
pretty ugly win. Yeah.
they like scraped by them.
Right.
Thanks to Tony Jones. I think they need to. I think they need to have some style points. Like that stuff is going to start to matter here at some point, especially when you're talking about, what they've been under Dennis Allen. It's been kind of ugly football. I think they need to generate some excitement here in New Orleans.
And Derek Carr hit on it with you in your interview with him last week, is that, there are no expectations for this team right now. And the way to create expectations is to get off to a fast start. I mean, there's really, I thought Just Column this week was really interesting. He wrote about kind of are the Saints still relevant from a national perspective? How many noon games are they going to get? How many primetime games are they going to get? Just conclusion was that, the Saints maybe aren't as in a bad as position as you would think from the outside, but I think that's also because they're playing a lot of big name opponents this year. So if they can knock some of those guys off, maybe they'll have some people to buy in. But Rod, to your overall point, this isn't that tough of a schedule. They should still be able to at least compete for the division given their slate.
Quarterbacks were a lot tougher this year.
Sure.
I think back to last year, and they could have gotten off to a great start. They had all the cold weather games early. Like, they had exactly what they wanted. And we talked about it last year, and they didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah. I mean, they really should have been 3-0 after that Green Bay game.
Yeah.
And you're talking like 4-1 after they beat the brakes off of New England. And, maybe it's different sort of season.
Different feeling when you go to Houston, you find a way to win that game, and all of a sudden you're rolling.
Yeah, well, I mean, they found a lot of ways to lose those games early.
Yeah. Take a look at their opponents here. Everybody knows the opponents, but they've outside of the division opponents who they of course will play home and away. They've got 6 other home games, 5 other away games. What about an intriguing opener? Matt, I know you.
Can I do Matt? Oh, no,
You talked about the possibility of them starting against the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels coming back to Louisiana to play in the Superdome, kind of hearkening back to when RG3 had his breakout game at the Superdome. I don't think that would be the worst idea for this. I think you want to play those rookie quarterbacks earlier in the year rather than later. But outside of that, Rod, you got an intriguing. How about opening against Kirk Cousins' Falcons?
I'm not a big fan of opening with division games, but that definitely be a goal. But mine would be the obvious one, I guess, would be Sean Payton coming into the world.
Oh, for the opener.
For the opener, that'd be something.
Let's go ahead and do it, man.
Yeah.
Because I think
I just don't
Let's do
think
it in
you're going to burn a prime time. I'd be shocked if that game wasn't in prime time, and I just don't think the league would.
if it's prime time, I think you have to do it sort of early in the season. I don't think you take a chance on putting Saints and Broncos
that's
in week
true.
7 and they're both 2 and 5.
Or even worse, in December the 8th, and they're both of them
Right.
are 6 and 9, and it's like, okay, this game means nothing.
I would push back on that just a little bit because I don't think you want to see Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham in prime time. I think you want to wait it in the middle of the season. So if Bo Nix has to play, if it's his first start, you want that little cushion.
Bo Nix
built
and
in.
Spencer Rattler.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Outside of the games that we already know they're not going to be playing week 1, I don't know if there's anybody else in the schedule outside of Atlanta that just really moves the needle for me.
What about Derek Carr and the Raiders?
No, nobody. I was just going to say nobody here is going to care about Derek Carr and the Raiders. As Derek Carr is fond of saying, nobody cares. I think it'd be fun to open the season against the Falcons, especially because of the way the kind of narrative has switched this offseason. The Saints have kind of really. I mean, I think you could make the case that outside of maybe the 21 season, Dennis Allen's first year here as a head coach, I think the Saints have been the favorite going into the season since, 2018?
I think so, yeah.
So I think
Maybe
it's
Brady's
pretty,
Bucks one of those years was.
Well, yeah, that's a 21 season. I think it was Brady's last season in Tampa. I think that was probably the only time since 2018 that
Go ahead.
that somebody other than the Saints have been the favorites going into the season. And I think the Falcons have kind of taken that over this offseason. Even with the bizarre draft, I think they've got a lot of people kind of believing in them right now. So I think that'd be a really interesting week 1 matchup if they decide to do it.
Especially how last season ended.
Yeah, maybe
the
more
Saints
likely
not-
that they start the new favorite against the Bucks, who have won it 2 years in a row.
Right.
And we'll see. Maybe that leaves Saints Panthers, but that there are a lot of once you eliminate the teams that we know they're not opening against, Kansas City, Dallas, Philly, Green Bay,
All the big name teams.
yeah. And they're probably not going to go back out to L.A. after coming back from L.A. I don't think they would send them back out to play the Chargers in Week 1. So I think that's probably off. There's not a lot of great teams on there. Like, it is a chance for them to get an opening win, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, also,
Now, to borrow the Michael Scott, like thinking of Jeff's column saying they're not overwhelming or underwhelming. They're just kind of whelming. So I don't, they're middle of the pack and they got to prove something to us. And we'll know the schedule tomorrow night. We will have a quick little reaction video here on Saints Insider that we'll do tomorrow night after the schedule's released. And then we'll have a full pod on Thursday about it. So we won't give a lot tomorrow, but just kind of quick reactions. I don't think Luke and Rod, you're not going to be there. So it'll be me, Matt, and Jeff. We'll talk just real quick about our quick takeaways, and then we'll have a full pod about it on Thursday. So that's our show for today. We thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Share our videos. Let everybody know that this is the best place to get your Saints news. For Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris, our man Norman Bell behind the glass, I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you on Thursday.